Hello, everyone. This is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to another edition of the X-Men 97 review series. And today we are going to be talking about Episode 8, Tolerance is Extinction, Part 1. And we are joined once again with the one and only, the badass himself, Rex the Boss 11. Rex, it's great to have you back here again. Hope you're doing okay.
I am doing very well. Hey guys, how's it going? Let's talk about X-Men 97, Episode 8.
So, Episode 8, Tolerance is Extinction, Part 1. This is Part 1 of a three-parter, and this episode pretty much reveals that Xavier is alive and well, much to the shock and surprise of the X-Men. So, Rex, we'll start with you first. What was your thoughts on Episode 8?
I mean, I won't lie, it was a little bit fillerish because obviously the whole sort of premise of Xavier returning, but in this episode, it was like a plot. Like there was more plot delivery and more plot line and plot build, more than there was just big, fighting against some big bad or the Sentinels or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to say, because once again, you don't expect every single episode to be completely, just action packed. And of course, we have to sort of just shed light quickly on the fact that there were some, at this stage, it seems that there were some production issues with one of the people that were doing the production, or some kind of producer or something. So you don't know what kind of effect that was having backstage. And watching this episode here in the whole recap and the reruns, when I watched it again the second time, all in full from episode 1 to 10, once all the episodes came out, yeah, this was a little bit like where if you was watching a movie, this would be the sort of middle bit of the movie. You get a bit of build, you get a bit of stuff like that, you get a bit of other stuff, but there's nothing major that stood out in this episode. Once again, a few little cameo roles and a few little cracks from Morph, but yeah, I don't. One thing I will draw light on is this: I don't like this doom and gloom parallel, like almost like we're not at this stage. Are we not remembering that this is actually a continuation of the original series, where it's like there has to be some kind of I mean, I suppose in the minds for some characters like Sebastian, I never really seen Sebastian as this sort of big bad. Like when I sort of seen his character, and yeah, so it's a bit strange at this stage, because Sebastian seems to be this character. Obviously, Cable's come back into it now as well, hasn't he? Magneto's been revealed that he's still alive.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, whose side is anyone on?
Something we always seem to say when we talk about
I enjoyed it, like I say, but in hindsight, looking back now, and obviously because of the length of time between the series coming out and now, I can't deny that this was one of those episodes where, yeah, you could never have this as a sort of first or second episode. This is the type of episode which would leave your basic fan a bit confused, especially with the 30-40 minute runtime, as opposed to what we would have got when we were younger, which was more 22 minutes. And mark my words when I say I'm not trying to be negative about this. I'm just trying to compare this to the rest of the series. There was one other episode which I did feel exactly the same as this. I just don't feel that it's necessary with these sort of like Netflix and other franchise series away from television. I just don't think it's necessary to have, middle of the range filler episodes which just feature little dribs and drabs of what we need to get, just so that you can lead into the last two episodes being, the finale, or they build up to the finale and then the finale.
Yeah.
It should have been a high action packed episode, maybe even away from the main storyline or the main plot. But I mean, what was this episode called? Something about extinction?
Yeah, this episode was called, it's a three-parter. This one is called Tolerance is Extinction. That's what this one was called.
I mean, at this point, they have done a good job, haven't they, building up the suspense. It's like, we're trying to kill all mutants. Once again, with like the original series, the Days of Our Future Past stuff, where it's like characters are traveling into the future. There's a logical thing here that people are overlooking. Well, if Cable's coming back from the future, then whatever they're going to do now clearly doesn't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think with this episode, it was okay for what it was, but this episode kind of felt like somewhere in the middle. Like this kind of had like episode 5 or 6 vibes. This didn't really feel like the finale, so to speak. You know, like obviously some finales would be like 3 parts, which is what this one is, but just kind of felt like, at least for this part, just kind of felt like this is somewhere in the middle. So like you have the first 3 or 4 episodes, which are really epic, and then you get to like episode 5 and 6, and there's not really a lot's going on. This kind of felt like that for me. I mean, it was still decent, I still enjoyed it, but I just thought, I don't know, really. It's okay. Could have been a little bit better, but it's not terrible. Far from it. Just maybe it wasn't as strong as some of the earlier ones, because this show really came back, no pun intended, with a bang. It really did. But this one here just feels like it's a little bit cools down a little bit with things. What do you think?
Yeah, and there's like, I don't know what they're doing, if it's flashes or visions to like random unnamed mutants or powerful people. I don't know what's going on. I do remember from this episode in the early stage, and I only mentioned that now because I've just been watching the first like 5 minutes in the background. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna lie, like without the context of what I've just been talking about, I would not know what was going on here. It's like I don't like how Cable's portrayed. Maybe it's just Cable's character throughout the series. I do not like Cable's character. I never liked him in the. I liked him in the Deadpool film that came out a few years ago, but I don't like him in the cartoon and the animated versions of him. The old animated series. I didn't like him in that, and I don't like him in this.
I don't mind him in this, but you know, with Cable in the cartoon, it's just he doesn't really make a big impact. It's just kind of like a hit and miss sort of thing for me. It's just like, oh, Cable's here. It's like, okay, and
That's it, really. That's kind of how I feel about Cable.
To be honest, they don't make a big enough deal about
no,
him in any of the earlier series or anything like that. And then he just seems to just pop in, obviously, because of the time travel aspect to the early series. It was like, yeah, this guy called Cable, which, you know, they hinted on was the son of Jean and Cyclops. When you say hinted on, it's like there were subtle things that when you were 8 years old, you would not know what the hell was going on. Yeah. So
yeah,
a lot of people just thought he was a grumpy old man who would come back to town and boss people around, but had a few like, extra skills and stuff like that. Yeah,
yeah,
to be fair, at this stage, I'm going to be honest, like, because we are coming off a bit negative. You got to remember this is all crammed in to arguably the greatest animated series that's been released, especially in since the early series of this and Spider-Man, etc., from the 1990s. So it's strange to say that, but yeah, these are the ones where, and don't mark my words when I say that Spider-Man, X-Men, all those animated series from the 90s, they've got multiple of these episodes crammed in to the series of like 24 episodes. You'll get 2 or 3 episodes which they just have no real overtoning meaning. And what I mean by you don't really need a villain of the week aspect, because those episodes can be just like this one here. I'll say something that is important in this episode that I actually thought of before. I think this is the episode where Sunsport finally, or is it Sunspot? Sunsport, yeah. He finally,
Sunspot.
yeah, he finally like speaks to his mum, doesn't he, about his mutant
Yeah,
abilities, etc. In this episode.
that's right. Well, in this episode, as we can see here, they got the news headlines that Xavier is alive and well, and much to the shock of the X-Men. See, this is the sort of thing.
The X-Men finding out that Xavier is alive is something you would have had in the middle.
Of the series, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think that their issue is that they didn't want Xavier to become the overwhelming factor in this, to maybe to turn off some of the older audience that would have kind of greeted that with the sort of like wrestling reference of, bring back the old veterans and the old legends to sort of get a little pop. Like they wanted the X-Men's team,
Like a rating.
even with or without Xavier, they wanted the whole premise of this to be, oh well, look, these are the X-Men. They're Charles Xavier's men, but with or without Charles Xavier, these are powerful people. So, of course, when they do bring back Xavier, you know that you're going to get into the next season. It's going to be, right, what's going to be the big bad that's going to take on the X-Men next season? If this, because now they look formidable now, once again. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's the way that these superhero things, they're either going to end on a cliffhanger or they're going to end with the good guys winning the day. It's very rare that you see like the part one of the Infinity War. You know what I mean? Like that you don't
yeah.
always see the bad guy standing tall.
Not always, no.
In fact, you never see the bad
And
guy standing tall normally.
very rarely you ever see that.
Yeah.
Very rarely. Yeah, this is also the episode, as you mentioned, where Sunsport actually finally tells his mum that he's got powers. I think this was fine. I mean, do you think this was okay having this moment in this episode? Or do you think maybe they could have done this maybe like
earlier? At the end of the day, this should have been done in episode like 3 or 4, so that you can get Sunsport fully charged up, and because he's clearly, obviously, a big character now, isn't he? And they're obviously building him subtly as like the future of the X-Men. That he's going to be one of the powerful ones, you know. And they're obviously not willing at the moment to jump around with time, as in this storyline. We all know how. Well, we know how this ends in the end, but
yeah,
you know, once they hit the reset button, you're gonna get where look at next season, what's happening on the real Earth, why everything else is happening. You're going to need characters like Sunsport to be able to be leaders and stuff now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's like we need to give him a big boost. He's not really been given that yet.
No, not yet. No doubt he probably will get the big boost later on in season 2, if and when.
They definitely should have done that earlier. They definitely should have done that earlier. I mean, I'd probably say 3 episodes earlier would have done well.
I think
maybe
really
it's just to do with the fact that they didn't want to over push him earlier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably a lot of why they did that. They probably just wanted to wait a bit. But yeah, I definitely think they should have done that much earlier in the show rather than here, if I'm truly honest. But it still works. But yeah, I think doing it earlier would have been much better, because at least that way you get that out of the way and we can just move forward with what goes on next. Another thing I thought was quite interesting in this episode was that not all of the X-Men were pleased to have Xavier back, were they? Some were a bit pissed about it, weren't they? Especially Cyclops.
Yeah, like more of, I mean, it's like a daddy issue thing, isn't it, with Cyclops? Like,
yeah.
more of a, you've abandoned us. What are you doing back here? We don't need you. And of course, now he's getting that leadership sort of vibe. Plus, of course, Cable's now around. So it's like that awkwardness of this grown man who's probably lived 25 years longer than you in the future somehow comes by. It's mad when you break down the Cable Cyclops relationship. It's like Cyclops is like a 35-year-old man whose son is like a 50-year-old man.
Yeah, that's true, you know.
From the future, who clearly lived 50 years before he came back in time to find his parents. Obviously, it makes sense because it's like, if Cable ran into trouble then and realised it was soft, there's no point in him going back in time to visit his parents when they're like 75.
No, there'd be no point.
He needs to go back and visit them when they're in their prime and part of the X-Men, doesn't he? So it's a bit awkward, but it works that way.
We see here Cyclops, Jean, and Cable travel to Harmony, Pennsylvania, where they learn about Bastion is a human-machine hybrid who was created after his father was infected with the advanced time-traveling Sentinel Nimrod. What was your thoughts on this? This part, I don't know really. I don't know what to think about this part with Bastion.
I had no idea. This was like, oh look, it's there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, this was. Oh man, honestly, I gotta say this now. I don't know what the storyline was in the comic books, but it must have been so convoluted from the comic books that they came up with this load of jargon. Like, it would have just made sure, it doesn't make sense if his mutant power was like the power of sort of like getting involved with like you know, radio waves and like phone calls and stuff like that. So he's sort of had that Charles Xavier sort of thing, but it was only when someone rung the school or wrong. So he had to constantly listen to ringing. I don't know what the thing was. I don't even know what he was doing. I don't even know what his powers are. Like, it's just almost like pluck random powers out of this little generator here, and you can give him a bit of a. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this Bastion character was or is.
Yeah, I think. What was he? Was he like? I know they were trying to portray him as the big bad, but to me, he just seemed more like Sinister's right-hand man.
I'm not gonna lie, there is no way that they could get me to believe that this guy was more powerful than, say, the guy we had captured, like Magneto. I'm thinking, no, you're not. You're not even a bigger bad than Magneto, and he's not even on the bad side at the moment.
No, he's not, and you cannot sit there and tell me that this guy's more powerful than Mr. Sinister. I refuse to buy that.
He's actually a mutant, where Sinister's more of like a concoction of like experiments and stuff, like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing.
Yeah, he is. I don't know, really. I just found that to be a little bit bizarre, if I'm honest. I thought, all right, are we supposed to believe this guy's more powerful than Sinister? Nah. I don't.
And let me ask a question. So, why is the woman who was working to sort of save mutants, why all of a sudden is she now like Bastion's like right-hand woman? I thought she was on the side of like peace and all that.
I have no idea. I actually thought originally it was Mystique in disguise.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if I missed out on some segment here that I didn't work out, where he sort of brainwashed her, because she seemed like she wasn't even. There's no way that she would have gone along with this sort of like control and manipulation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I seriously thought this must be Mystique, because we keep seeing her around a lot, but it turned out not to be Mystique, so I was a little bit surprised about that. So we're up to now. That reporter lady, was she like Beast's new girlfriend or something? Because I keep seeing her with him all the time.
Something like that. She's obviously a love interest of his, but
yeah.
Once again, like whose side is he on thing leads me to believe that any of the outside random characters can betray. Like,
yeah.
Now, when they talk to Bastion's mum, she's a bit off key as well.
Oh yeah, this is where they go to meet her, don't they? She's the old lady. Yeah, she was a bit of a weirdo as well.
I mean, there's no saying that she didn't have any part in what he became. Do you know what I mean? Like she shows in the picture. She shows in the pictures of where he's drawn, like the Sentinels and stuff. Then she whaps out, don't she? As in, like she's got. You know, at this point, I'll be honest with you, because of the lack of the PG, this is the bit that you get in the sort of Japanese anime, but you would never get this in the translation of what we would get in America and in England and places like that, in Europe. So we'd get this sort of head scratchy bits cut out of the cartoon and cut out of the series. So leaving this in, it's a bit mad, because all of a sudden, like, this is where everyone just starts to randomly sort of turn into zombies, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. This is where everyone started getting corrupted. This bit was okay, but it was a little bit strange.
And is this the same virus that infected Cable?
I think it was a completely different one.
Because this is another confusing thing that I can't get my head around either.
No, yes, this is where Bastion's was starting to like control everyone, wasn't he? Yeah, I couldn't get my head around this one either.
Yeah, and this is where B's girlfriend obviously becomes. This is where she's relevant, because she becomes, if I'm not wrong, she becomes one of these like sentinel human being type of creatures.
Yeah, that's right.
Naturally, it's like the Power Rangers now, where they're all next to somebody who will change, so they've all got to fight somebody, and it's normally a loved one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you always get something like that. Yeah, I think it was a different type of virus. I think it's the same sort of virus they used on Cable as a child, but I think it's just a bit more advanced. But yeah, again, as you say, some things weren't really made very clear in this one.
Because it's like super zombies. Like the woman, they're like powerful as anything, aren't they? These zombies at first, it's like they are very, very powerful sort of human sentinels. This is like, to be honest, these are human sentinels. That's as close to what I would refer to these as. Is they are sentinels. They are humans with the abilities of what the sentinels have.
Yeah, pretty much, really. I think that's kind of what they were going for, weren't they?
Well, these are fighting like the main characters, like Juggernaut and other people.
You start to see here, everyone starts getting powers and starts becoming like human sentinels, as you mentioned.
It's almost like the opposite of trying to eradicate the mutants, isn't it? This is almost like trying to make everybody like a subservient mutant.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe here.
We finally get to see a bit of what Sunsport can actually do under duress, where he's not really bothered that he might hurt humans because all of the humans seem to be turning into fucking zombies.
Yeah, or you see all their eyes all turning yellow. Even Beast Lady friend, as you mentioned, even she's got infected as well.
And then we get, if I'm not wrong, they set the mansion on fire, don't they?
But yeah, I think they do actually set the mansion on fire.
They set the mansion on fire. They set the mansion on fire.
Yeah, and you see like the whole world's basically been transformed.
And you get to see bits that you just would never see, which is like Wolverine stabbing what looks like humans. Like you would have never got to see that in the cartoon and the original series. He's basically just chopping people in half.
You would have seen that in the if this was like a manga series, as you mentioned, you would have seen that 100%. But you would never have seen it otherwise in like the US shows. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's good that I'm kind of glad in a way that Wolverine actually got to stab someone because he's like a man beast, so to speak. So I'm glad he actually got to be Wolverine because only time you would have seen something like this is in the comics. So I'm glad we got to see it in the cartoon because you wouldn't have seen it otherwise. I love how Wolverine's just taking out anything and everything. I love it.
Yeah, Nightcrawler as well gets to use the three like pirate swords.
Yeah, you'd never have seen that before.
Wolverine's cutting off heads, but they can just reattach. Obviously, it makes sure that you get to see that these creatures can reattach limbs, regenerate, and all that.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, this episode wasn't terrible. It does pick up. This episode does pick up like the second half. But yeah, the first half was just a little bit slow.
For me, that it's hard to say this, but it is basically just like the Sentinel thing, isn't it? It's just like them fighting a load of Sentinels. Whereas how many times, if you've watched this from series 1 towards X-Men 97, and let's say that, every 20 minutes, per 20 minutes, how many times in the whole series do you think that they've destroyed and fought Sentinels?
Oh, it seemed like every episode.
Yeah, exactly. Every episode. So this is just a new reskin of the Sentinels. So even when I said earlier on, there's not much action in this, I'm not counting this because apart from, one of the biggest parts of this episode I'm watching in the background right now, which is Sunsport, like catching and saving Jubilee, and then, fighting and flying. Because obviously this is a new sort of build for an X-Men who's doing different stuff. There's bits of this which is like, they built this like this. I mean, to be fair, I think that, I don't know about what you think, but I get the feeling that this was maybe supposed to have been the original final episode, but during the production of this episode, they realized what I've just said then, which is, but these are just kind of just like human sentinels, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, pretty much.
Even if they win the battle here and win the day, the audience is going to be a little bit annoyed if you wind this up with them just beating these humanoid sentinels.
Yeah. I mean, this episode with, everyone becoming like human sentinels, this definitely feels like a filler. And this is something you would have probably have seen maybe around about episode 5 or 6 after you had the first 4 big epic stuff. So up to here, this is where we start to get the cameos from other Marvel heroes. And this one kind of answers a question that a lot of fans, including myself, had been wanting to have answered for years.
And this is something to do with Spider-Man, because if you remember,
at the end of Spider-Man, the 90s cartoon, we all know that Mary Jane disappeared. And we get here in the cameo that, we see Peter Parker and we see Mary Jane is with him. So it's obvious that he found her. So I thought that was a nice little treat they gave to the fans. Like, yeah, he got the girl in the end. So what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was a nice little touch for Peter Parker. I mean, there was the cameos here with Spider-Man. It was the Shogun character, wasn't it, from the Wolverine film?
Yeah.
And there was somebody else as well that was in that cameo as well.
Daredevil.
No, I don't think Daredevil was in this cameo in this one here. They brought down just before Xavier returns.
Yeah.
Some kind of EMP goes off or something, and you get the cameos of Spider-Man's flipping around and he stops on a roof to look and see what's happening.
That's
and
right.
then you get an appearance from, like I said, the Shogun character, and then there's somebody else who I just literally just blanked on in the last like 30 seconds. But yeah, they make an appearance, and if I'm honest, those little things like that, they're subtle because I think that they are their way of showing us, oh yeah, you know that these guys are getting a series as well, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought that was good. They did that. It's like we haven't forgotten about them, but yeah, you'll be seeing more of them at some point. So yeah, that was a nice touch.
Loads and loads of cameos in this series. Just from what I remember, like there's loads. Obviously, because Morph obviously keeps changing into different characters all the time as well. That helps with that type of subject. But yeah, they do. They have a few cameos.
Right. So we get a cameo. Obviously, we get a cameo appearance from Spider-Man. We also get a cameo appearance from Silver Samurai.
Yeah, it's because Magneto gets released, doesn't he? And he lets out some kind of like electromagnetic pulse as the reporter lady who released him, she is kidnapped. And then obviously around the world, you start to get various people noticing something's happening around the world. Like obviously Magneto sends pulses around the world. That's also proving how strong he is as a character. So yeah, Spider-Man flips in. You get the Silver Samurai, Silver Shogun guy we're looking on because you get a blackout in Tokyo. Sentinels basically get knocked out of the sky. I've just watched that segment in full in front of my face.
And another appearance you get here is Omega Red as well. So as we come to the end of this one, we see a pod crash land outside the mansion, and we see Xavier is back and summons the X-Men, letting them all know that he has returned. So that ends episode 8. I'm going to be honest, the first half of episode 8 was really slow. Not much going on here. But the second half, right towards the end, up to when Xavier appears, yeah, was pretty decent. So, what was your thoughts on this whole episode, Rex? Overall,
it's pretty similar. To be fair, overall, there was they needed something to happen that led into Charles Xavier returning at the end.
Yes.
So what we got was an episode of human, robotic, android Sentinels to replace the Sentinels that we would normally get. But yeah, the main thing in this episode I think we can take from it is obviously the release and the return potentially of Magneto, and then of course of Charles Xavier. So at some point we're obviously going to get some kind of reuniting of Charles and Magneto, whether they'll work together, who knows. But yeah, I am gonna just fast forward straight into the ratings of this episode here, and I'm just gonna give this episode. I'm gonna give it a 7, which is quite low for my ratings of this series, because I know for a fact that the next episode is much better than this, and I know for a fact that the episode that came before this was better. I think we had this issue once again with episode 5 or 6, and it just felt like you can sniff the filler episodes old enough and long enough in the tooth, and I've watched so many of these programs where it was a lot easier to watch filler episodes when they were 20 minutes long, where you could just wait till tomorrow, not a 40-minute episode where you've got to wait another 6 days and 23 hours to watch it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to agree with you on that. I kind of had that rating in my head as well. I'll give this a 7 out of 10, which is quite low for me as well, because ever since we started this, we've really come in like giving it really high ratings. I mean, I think even one episode we gave it a 10 out of 10. But yeah, this is quite a bit of I wouldn't say a jump off the cliff, but a bit of a nosedive, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will give this 7 out of 10.
End of the day, if we're quick to call out that the other ones are so good, looking back in hindsight now, this is where you can have that joy of not being clouded by the first, say, 10 days that a series or a film comes out.
So anyway, that's going to be it from us. We're going to wrap this one up.
What did you guys think of episode 8, Tolerance is Extinction, part 1?
Did you enjoy it? What was your thoughts on Bastion turning everyone into human sentinels? Did you enjoy that aspect? What was your thoughts on the Spider-Man cameo that we were treated to? Do you think this could lead to maybe a Spider-Man 98 series, perhaps? And also, what about the ending with the return of Xavier? How do you think this is going to play out in part 2? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and we will see all of you next time for another edition of the X-Men 97 review series, where we're going to be talking about episode 9. Rex, pleasure as always. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, pleasure. Once again, like we say, we have to be subjective. And of course, guys, stay tuned for more.
Bye for now, guys.